We're going to talk today about stress exacerbators. Those are circumstances and things and situations and life happenings and social happenings that can really exacerbate stress and make stress chronic and even worse. Excuse me. The first is the adverse childhood experiences. Many of you probably have heard about it. They're commonly called ACE. And what we talk about when we talk about adverse childhood experiences is that these are traumatic or stressful events that occur during childhood and can have long-lasting impacts on a person's physical, mental, and emotional health throughout their life. What people are surprised to find out is that there's also physical impact, that the more adverse childhood experiences you have, everybody has at least some, the more that you have, and if you don't heal them, which can be healed, then the more likely you are to develop chronic and life-threatening diseases, besides the emotional and mental toll that these can take. So what are these types of ACE? These types of adverse childhood experience are three types. One is abuse. It can be physical abuse, emotional, and or sexual abuse, any kind of these, which we would be surprised to know that it is very common, probably about 1 in 3 women are sexually abused, and that includes girls. So, and men, I think it's like 1 in 5. There's also when you have physical and emotional neglect, whether it was intentional or it was accidental, or your parents couldn't avoid it because they were living through war or mental illness or a horrible mental health crisis. And there's also household dysfunction. So experiencing domestic violence, substance abuse, mental illness, parental separation or divorce, all of these can affect and really impact your childhood, right? Each one, of course, with a different level. It's different to have an amicable divorce than to, be a witness to domestic violence. Ignoring or failing to address childhood trauma and adverse experiences can lead to can keep you from really healing and from becoming resilient, and it's what can keep us stuck. So by addressing the ACEs through comprehensive approaches that focus on healing, resiliency, and prevention, individuals can mitigate the long-term effects and improve the quality of your life. So even if you have a lot, you can still heal and improve. I'm not going to ask you to talk about these, to write about these in the assignment, but I'm asking you to take a moment to think. And to think if you have had a lot, then maybe you need some help. If you've had less, you're lucky, but how have they affected you? And so think about this, don't write about it. How do adverse childhood experiences contribute to toxic stress? Just think about it, no need to write about it. Well, you're actually going to write about that question. I'm sorry. What you don't need to write is about your personal childhood experiences. Then disconnection from nature. That's another way that can exacerbate our stress. Reduced contact from the natural world and outdoor environment can diminish opportunities for relaxation, reflection, and stress reduction. Concrete lack of greenery, artificial light in our cities, buildings, and homes increases stress. There is scientific evidence that greenery leads to long-term health outcomes. We also know that the more affluent the neighborhood, the more trees and greenery. That's why the more affluent, the more rich, the more money, the more health too. Yeah. But for those of you living in Portland, we're fortunate to have all these areas, even on campus, where there's greenery and there's contact with nature. When you look at it, a green landscape, even from indoors, your heart rate will go down and you'll change from your sympathetic nervous activity to the parasympathetic, which we've talked about before. There are dozens of studies, peer-reviewed studies, scientific and evidence-based studies that have studied health outcomes that are tied to our contact with nature. And all those studies also took into consideration the socioeconomic status. So if you're rich or poor. And there's also seems to be a relationship between greenery and the strength of our immune system. So they did an experiment where they had people spend several days in nature. So they took these two groups of people and they said, you're going to go on vacation for a long weekend. They took their blood first and looked at their levels of stress. Then they took them on vacation. Half of them went to New York in a hotel, luxury hotel, got to do shopping, etc. The other half got to go to a resort in nature and be in contact with nature. When they came back, they saw that a 3-day weekend in a forest would boost your natural killer cells out above 50%, while there was no change in your blood level in an urban city and in the city. And then 30 days later, a month after, the blood work still showed that immune system, that defense system, those killer cells were still above 30%. So nature really can help. So please, I want you to watch a 2-minute video on cynicism that is linked in today's module. I'm not going to link it here because we're going to continue talking about cynicism. And then please take a movement break and then come back, pause it, and come back to finish this video. So we talked about some stress exacerbators, one being cynicism, which is really how we approach and view the world, and it's the most common. So I hope you enjoyed the video and watched it. You're going to be working on this. We also saw how we're going to talk about how loneliness can really exacerbate stress and make it chronic. And it's kind of like, I don't know why I can't. Okay, I don't know what's going on here. Oh, okay. Okay, I don't know what is going on here. So, okay. So loneliness is a very big stress exacerbator. We now know that it's also kind of the key to longevity, to happiness, and to mental health. I also linked an article about on the latest report on happiness that was published in 2025 in April, that Harvard did the longest longitudinal study about happiness, and it's found that the key is connection, is being with other people, is feeling that you're part of a community and having friends and people you can count on, people you can see and touch. We now know that just seeing on the screen is better than nothing, but does not help like being in person can help. The Surgeon General in 2022 declared that the US had a loneliness pandemic, and not only in the US. In England, they actually named a minister of loneliness. Loneliness is not just a feeling, but it's a condition that can have profound effects on our health and well-being. We're evolved to be in groups, so our body reacts in fear when we're alone. The only reason we were able to survive, in spite of large predators and animals that were faster and bigger and stronger or quicker than us, was because we were together in groups. We knew that in groups we could protect each other, keep watch. So even now, even though we might not need it, when we're alone, our body, our brain, the most primitive part of our brain is sending a danger signal saying, be careful, it's terrible, you're alone, you're in danger. So that's why you feel stress. We also have long studies that have shown how the tiny interactions that we have in the day, like saying hello to a doorman at the bank, or to a police officer, or to the driver of the bus, or to the barista that gives us our coffee, are essential for our mental health and our well-being. So if you've been isolated, if you don't leave because you're anxious, you don't leave your house, and if you don't have human contact, interaction, even the small ones, you're suffering, and you won't get better until you actually get out. The more you stay locked in, the worse it's going to become. Also, we know that 20 years ago, Americans could identify 5 close people they could go to in an emergency. In the latest interview, 85% couldn't even identify one. People are choosing to stay home and to live alone. We now are not, we've made up a lot of stuff like, I don't feel safe. Well, feeling safe doesn't mean that something's making you harm. I don't feel safe when I'm in a new situation, but I come out happier and stronger. So courage is not never feeling fear or or feeling unsafe. Courage is doing things in spite of feeling unsafe and feeling fear. Being anxious or shy about meeting other people doesn't mean that that is causing you harm. It just means that, yeah, you're in pain because you have an anomaly, some things that isn't correct, right? So practice being with other people. And after a while, you won't feel that fear anymore. So the causes of loneliness are societal shifts, how we've changed our family structure. We no longer have contact with our extended family, especially in the West. We talk about mom, dad, and kids. And if anybody comes from Latino, Asian, African families, um, not Muslim families so much, but people that come from Arab countries, we find that we have large extended families where we count in our family our grandparents, our uncles, our cousins, our nieces, our nephews. We also know that there's a correlation between the advent of the cell phone and loneliness and disconnection. We are more digitally connected, but that leads us to reduce face-to-face time with people. It makes us feel isolated even when we're in crowded spaces. And when we are with people, we're constantly interrupted and we're not present with them because we're on the phone looking and talking to people who aren't there. And there's also mistrust and cynicism. We talked of cynicism. The consequences of this loneliness pandemic, we've seen the biggest impacts on mental health. There's been the highest rates of depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation ever. There's been physical health risks. Studies show that loneliness can be as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It leads to increased cardiovascular disease, stroke, and early mortality. So yes, loneliness kills. There's an impact, especially on the elderly, especially in our country where we dispose of the elderly or we don't have resources so that we can take care of them properly and have them close to us. So they're particularly vulnerable to loneliness. And also, we found that on youth and adolescents, social media and virtual interactions have contributed to a sense of isolation among younger populations, affecting their social development and mental health. We know that positive relationships are the single most important predictor of well-being, according to the longest running study on human happiness in the world. So please take a moment to reflect on how cynicism and loneliness increase our stress. And with this, this is the end of this class. And please continue in working on the other activities. Thank you.